I never thought one moment of weakness could cost me everything. But here I am, sitting alone in a tiny apartment that doesn't even feel like mine, staring at my phone, hoping for a message that never comes. Just 6 months ago, I had a beautiful home, a loving husband, and a quiet kind of happiness that maybe I took for granted. Now all I have is silence, and 1,000 questions I can't stop asking myself, starting with, why did I choose my coworker over my marriage? It all started so gradually. You know how work friendships can slowly blur into something else without you even noticing? That's how it was with Daniel. We worked long hours, shared the same frustrations, laughed at the same dumb jokes. He listened in a way my husband, Mark, hadn't in years. At least, that's what I told myself. One late night at the office turned into dinner, which turned into drinks, which turned into something I can't take back. When I confessed to Mark, I expected anger. What I didn't expect was how fast he let me go. No shouting, no fight. Just, done. And Daniel? At first, he was supportive, comforting. Said we'd figure it out. But as soon as the reality set in, me, without a home, without a plan, he pulled away. Suddenly he was too busy or not ready for a relationship. The same man who made me believe in second chances now won't even return my texts. I gave up everything for a connection I thought was real. But now I'm not sure if I was ever more than a distraction to him. I see him every day at work, pretending like nothing happened. I try to act like it doesn't affect me, but it does. It eats at me. I lie awake at night wondering if I made the biggest mistake of my life, if I confused attention for affection, if I burned down my marriage for someone who was never really there for me. And now, I have to ask myself something I never thought I would: was I just convenient for him until I wasn't? But what happened last week changed everything. And I'm still not sure how to deal with it. Last week, I saw Daniel with someone. Not just anyone, someone new. They were at the coffee shop near our office, sitting close, laughing in that easy way I thought was just ours. She reached across the table to touch his hand, and he didn't pull away. He looked happy. Relaxed. Like he wasn't carrying any guilt. Like none of what happened between us had ever meant anything. I stood frozen outside the window, my heart racing like I'd just run a mile. I didn't go in. I couldn't. I just stood there until the barista gave me a weird look, and then I walked away, pretending like my chest wasn't caving in. I keep replaying everything in my head. The way Daniel used to linger at my desk for just a few seconds too long. The way he noticed when I changed my hair or wore a new perfume. The way he looked at me like I was someone special. And now I can't help but wonder, was I ever? Or was I just a distraction from whatever was going wrong in his life? My marriage wasn't perfect. Mark and I had grown distant. Work stress, long nights, barely talking unless it was about bills or groceries. Still, there was comfort in the routine, in knowing someone always had your back. I think I forgot how rare that is. With Daniel, it felt exciting again. New. He made me feel seen. But now that I've stepped out of that life and tried to step into something with him, I realize how little I actually knew about him. He's not the same now. At work, he avoids eye contact. He doesn't smile like he used to. I tried to talk to him, just once, in the hallway, but he brushed it off like we'd never shared anything. It's complicated, he said, barely meeting my eyes. And then he walked away. No explanation. No apology. Just silence. Meanwhile, I'm left picking up the pieces of a life I shattered. My friends are split. Some say I made a mistake, others say I was brave for following my heart. But what if my heart was just wrong? The part that hurts the most? I don't even know if I regret leaving Mark for Daniel, or if I just regret that Daniel never actually stayed. And now, something tells me I haven't even seen the full truth yet. The thing about silence is, it's loud. Especially when it comes from someone who once knew your every secret. Daniel's distance isn't just uncomfortable now, it's almost cruel. And what's worse is, people at work are starting to notice. I catch glances. I hear whispers when I walk into meetings. I even heard someone call me that girl he messed around with. Like I was the problem. Like I was reckless and naive, and he was just some poor guy who made a mistake. But no one saw the late-night messages, the long drives home, the promises whispered between office walls. I started wondering if maybe Daniel had said something to shift the story. Paint himself in a better light. I mean, he still gets invited to lunch with the team. People still laugh at his jokes. But me? I've become invisible. Except to Claire. Claire from HR. The one who's always watching, always pretending to be friendly, but clearly knows more than she lets on. She pulled me aside the other day, said, "Just a heads up, management's been paying attention to the tension. Might be good to keep things quiet." I nodded, but inside I was boiling. Quiet? That's all I've been. Meanwhile, Mark hasn't contacted me once. Not a message. Not a single, "How are you?" I thought maybe after the dust settled, we'd talk. At least close the door properly. But maybe, for him, the door slammed shut the second I told him about Daniel. I still remember the look in his eyes. Not anger, disappointment. Like I wasn't the person he thought I was. I keep wondering if I was ever that person, or if I just grew into someone else while he wasn't looking. And then there's something else, something I haven't told anyone. Last weekend, I found something in Daniel's desk. I wasn't snooping, not exactly. I dropped off a report, and the drawer was slightly open. Inside was a photo. Of him and the woman from the coffee shop. But it wasn't new. It was old. Worn. Like it had been there a while. Which means she wasn't new at all. She might have been in the picture long before I ever was. So now I'm not just wondering why Daniel won't let me back in. I'm starting to wonder if he ever let me in at all. I couldn't get that photo out of my head. The way her hand was wrapped around Daniel's arm, like she belonged there. Like I was the outsider. And the more I thought about it, the more the pieces started to click. The late replies, the sudden coldness, how fast he backed off once I left Mark. Maybe I wasn't just a mistake, maybe I was a backup plan. Or worse, just a temporary thrill until things settled down with her. I didn't say anything to him. I wanted to. I wanted to storm into his office, slam that drawer shut in front of him and ask who she was. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. And maybe because part of me was still hoping I was wrong. Then something strange happened. Claire called me into her office again. This time, she wasn't smiling. She asked if I'd had any issues with Daniel outside of work. I froze. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face blank. I said, "No, why?" She hesitated, then said there had been a few concerns raised about emotional boundaries between coworkers, and that someone had mentioned my name. That's when it hit me, Daniel was flipping the narrative. Making me look unstable. Like I was the one who crossed the line. Like I had imagined everything between us. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept going back through old messages, old memories, trying to find proof that it was real. That I wasn't crazy. But the more I looked, the more I saw how careful he had been. No real commitments. No written promises. Just vague words, soft gestures, and enough mixed signals to keep me confused. I gave up everything based on a feeling. And now that feeling was turning into fear, fear that he could actually ruin what little I had left. Then yesterday, I overheard something in the break room. One of Daniel's close friends, Jason, was on the phone. I didn't catch the whole conversation, but I heard enough. He said, "She found out about them." Yeah, I don't know how he thought he could juggle both for this long. My heart stopped. Them. Not her. Them. So there was more than just one lie. And if that's true, I don't think I'm the only one who got played. That word, them, kept ringing in my ears. I sat at my desk the rest of the day pretending to work, barely able to focus. My hands were cold. My thoughts spun in circles. If Jason said them, then who else had Daniel been involved with? And for how long? Had I really been just one of many? I thought I had hit the bottom, but it turns out I'd barely scratched the surface. I couldn't stop myself. That night, I dug deeper. I checked old social media photos, tagged posts, comments from women whose names I'd heard in passing but never thought twice about. It was all subtle, never obvious, but once I started connecting the dots, a pattern began to show. He had a way of making people feel seen, special, chosen. But when you looked close enough, you could see the same charm repeated, recycled like a script. I wasn't the first. And I might not have even been the most important. The next day, I found an envelope on my desk. No name. Just a single piece of paper inside. It was a screenshot, an email Daniel had sent weeks ago. It wasn't to me. It wasn't about work. It was to someone named Michelle. In it, he wrote, "I had to calm her down, but she'll get over it. Just give me time to create some space." The timestamp? Just 2 days after I told Mark the truth and walked away from our marriage. I felt sick. Someone had slipped that to me on purpose. Quietly. Which meant someone else knew. Someone was watching this unfold just as closely as I was. I wanted to confront Daniel, but everything in me said to wait. To see what else would surface. So I played along. I acted normal at work. I smiled in meetings. I avoided Claire. But I also started keeping notes. Every strange interaction. Every whispered conversation. Every lingering look between Daniel and other women in the office. And the more I watched, the clearer it became, I wasn't the only one who had been burned. Then came the second twist. Mark reached out. After weeks of silence, he sent a short message, "We need to talk. It's about Daniel." I stared at the screen, stunned. What could Mark possibly have to say about him? They'd never even spoken, not directly. But my instincts flared, something wasn't right. I agreed to meet him that evening at a quiet cafe near our old neighborhood. He was already there when I arrived. And the look on his face wasn't anger. It was something closer to concern. He pulled out his phone and showed me an email, anonymous, no name, no signature. But it had screenshots. Dozens. Of Daniel. With different women. Messages. Time stamps. Some even before I got involved with him. One woman, in particular, came up again and again. Her name? Michelle. The same name from the letter on my desk. And that's when Mark looked at me and said, "You're not the only one he's lied to. But I think this goes deeper than either of us realized." I sat across from Mark, my heart racing as I scrolled through the screenshots on his phone. The messages weren't just casual. They were calculated. Daniel had carefully managed multiple women, saying just enough to keep them invested, but never enough to be held accountable. The most shocking part? The dates. Some overlapped with the time Daniel and I had gotten close. Others went even further back. It was a pattern, one that had probably been going on for years. Then Mark dropped the final piece. "I hired someone," he said quietly. "After you left, I couldn't let it go. I needed answers, not about you, but about him." Something didn't sit right. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. Inside were reports, phone records, and surveillance photos. Daniel wasn't just leading women on, he was targeting them. Mostly coworkers. Women going through rough patches. Divorces. Burnouts. People like me. Like I had been. And then came the twist I never saw coming. One of the names listed in the report? Claire. Yes, Claire from HR, the same woman who kept pulling me aside, warning me to stay quiet. She wasn't just aware of what Daniel was doing, she was part of it. Mark's investigator had linked her to multiple complaints that were resolved internally and never spoken of again. She had helped cover for Daniel, protected him from consequences, and possibly even used her position to silence other women. Women like me. My stomach turned. All those moments I thought she was being careful or concerned, she was managing me. Keeping me in check. Making sure I didn't dig too deep. But it was too late for them to hide now. I took everything Mark had gathered and sent it, anonymously, to upper management. Within a week, both Daniel and Claire were under official investigation. Quiet meetings turned into full-scale reviews. I didn't stick around to see it all unfold. I handed in my resignation, not because I was running, but because I was finally ready to start over. I lost my marriage, my peace, and a part of myself chasing something that was never real. But the twist? Mark and I were talking again. Not about getting back together, at least, not yet, but about truth, healing, and how sometimes the people we hurt the most are the only ones who really show up when everything falls apart. I didn't expect peace to come from something so messy. But after everything, Daniel's betrayal, Claire's manipulation, the fallout at work, there was this strange stillness. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally exhaled. The official investigation took its course, and while I kept my distance, I heard from a few former coworkers that Daniel was placed on administrative leave, and Claire quietly resigned before anything formal was announced. No one said much, but people definitely noticed. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't trying to chase closure. I wasn't digging for answers or waiting for someone else to give me an apology. I just started moving on. I found freelance work, nothing fancy, but enough to pay the bills. I even started therapy, something I should have done long before all this. It helped me see things more clearly, especially how I'd confused attention for affection, and validation for love. That was a hard truth to swallow, but it also freed me from blaming myself for everything that happened. Mark and I kept meeting, no pressure, no expectations. Just two people trying to understand how they ended up so far from where they started. We talked more in those quiet conversations than we had in the final year of our marriage. I think we both grew in ways we didn't expect. Whether we end up together again or not, I know we respect each other now in a way we hadn't before. And honestly, that matters more than anything. Sometimes, I still think about Daniel. Not in a way that makes me miss him, but in a way that reminds me how easily we fall for the version of someone we want them to be. The real Daniel was never the man I risked everything for. He was a story I told myself because I needed something to feel alive again. So if there's anything I've learned through this chaos, it's this: don't mistake emotional attention for genuine care. Real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. And no matter how far off track you go, it's never too late to start choosing yourself again. In the end, I didn't get the love story I imagined, but maybe I got something better. The truth. And the chance to rewrite my own.